I think with photography, the power of it, especially the further back we go in time, represents the truth, what is real, because it is just the capturing of light. Empire is about photography. My entire adult life has been about photography. For me, it's sort of deeply meaningful because everything I've kind of ever worked on personally and professionally has always had something to do with photography. I try to approach Empire in a way which, in some ways, I would say stands on the shoulders of the giants in our space. And I very much looked at the important bodies of work that have been produced in post-photography, and I could see that there weren't really many bodies of work that really stem from real photography. It was almost like a lot of work is almost like we don't need photography anymore. And maybe that's where some negative feelings around the work, sort of the genre, comes from. But I was like, how about we address this? Like, how about we make it come from photography, make it come from like a real place, but it is no longer real. So when I began looking at the slides we were collecting, in the very beginning it was obvious that we're looking at British culture because I was buying very local stuff through eBay. I was buying like people's family holidays, birthdays, weddings. And then after I started to sort of get into this world of film and slide collecting, I started to find really fascinating lots, like some families, Disneyland holidays to, in Florida or California, and some stuff from Japan. And that started to really, I just picked them up because they were just so interesting to me. One thing I started to realize when I started to branch out more and started to collect stuff from what I felt was all around the world, I realized it all stemmed back to the people who were producing this stuff were mainly coming from Western society. And what we were looking at, even if it was shot in Japan or any of these more sort of exotic places, it was still from the gaze of Western society. So it was being produced and distributed from this sort of vector and this point. It wasn't really intended from the beginning to kind of prove this at all. It's just something that came out of the whole process. I'm half Korean and half English. My father is English, my mother is Korean. When I first entered into sort of the AI arts and produced my first body of work, I tackled my Korean heritage first. And it just kind of felt natural for like the part two to tackle the Englishness. And when I started to really drill into that, I started to realize how much bigger that was than sort of the Korean side of the story. And so what started with me just trying to tackle my own sort of heritage or identity actually just evolved into this sort of study of Britishness and Englishness and the British Empire, which kind of took me all around the world. When creating Empire, we use stable diffusion to blend images together. So we take slide one, slide two, and we merge them or blend them in what I would describe as like AI collaging. We started this process by choosing the slides that we blend together. And after you do that a certain amount of times, I was like kind of just putting my own biases into it. It was too much of me in there, and it was becoming boring. So what we did then is just kind of put all of the slides into one huge batch all together, like one big folder with all 35,000. And we just let the computer just randomize through all of the slides. This process, I think, in some ways unlocked some kind of unbiased approach to history, which is like very difficult to achieve. I think everyone's got strong biases on like history, and you know, there's a lot of like nationalism involved, and images can be very loaded. So I guess this process came from me trying to remove my own biases as much as possible. It was necessary actually when sort of trying to produce something at this scale with the size of the data set that we were playing with. And then it really is just us in our head projecting our feelings onto these sort of random outputs. And for me, that is another element of Empire which I just found fascinating, and how every person from different cultures can probably look at the same image and it will produce different feelings for them. At the end, you know, I had big hopes coming into it. I wanted to produce a body of work that contributes to post-photography, and that was my goal, and only time will tell if that has been achieved.